You know what we had back in the day?
What?
We had knees.
Everyone, and welcome back to the Recap Review. Today we are going to be going over a fan favorite and a personal favorite of mine. That's right, the Toa Metru. Let's start off by going over from left to right, set number 8603, Whenua, at a piece count of 49. 8602, no comma, piece count of 46. 8601, Vakama, piece count of 48. 8606, Nuju, also at a piece count of 48. 8605, Matau, at a piece count of 46. And finally, set number 8604, Anawa, at a piece count of 44. And at time of release, the sets were approximately $8. Boy, I bet some memories are flooding back to you now after seeing these guys again. They sure are to me. I mean, I remember when I had Matau, I'd put the wings on his back and I'd throw him into the air and I'd expect him to fly and he'd land on the concrete and I'd break his shoulder plates. That's a true story, but not one I needed to share. But anyway, let's get on to the review. First of all, comparisons, because everybody knows that the Toa Metru were actually first seen as the Turaga on Matanui. So let's get the comparisons out of the way with Turaga Whenua, Turaga no Kama, Turaga Vakama, getting the shot there, Turaga Nuju, Turaga Matau, and Turaga Anawa. So there you have it. Obviously, there is a lot of differences. The Toa Metru are a lot more detailed, they're a lot taller, they have a lot more functions and mobility. The Turaga are a lot brighter, they're a lot more concise, shorter, and they have different eye colors, mask shapes, weapons, so on and so forth. So there's your comparison. If you want to keep looking at this, pause right here. But until then, we have a review to get to. So let's start off at everyone's favorite spot, the pros. Obviously, there are a lot of really innovative things here for the Bionicle line. Now, back in 2003, they actually gave us knees, and that was a huge deal. We got knees, which is fantastic because the Toa Nuva and the Toa Mata did not have knees, and pretty much every other Bionicle character we could think of. Well, these guys carry on the trait of having knees that bend and go so far as to use the ball and socket system on the torsos instead of on the legs. So that way we have a large range of mobility for both legs. We also have the standard ankles, but now introducing elbows, complete with a stabbing function, just in case you run into Tuma. So there you have it. The Toa Metru introduced elbows, so we have even more mobility. Not only that, but they gave us posable necks. The new headpiece has a ball joint on it, so that way it connects into a standard hand socket, and bam! You can look around, you can look up, you can look down, side to side. That's fantastic, and it was a big deal. These guys were cool. So aside from the mobility, another pro would probably be their concise look. They look like a team. Granted, they are technically clone sets, but not in the same way that the Borak are clone sets. They more kind of lean toward the Toa Mata, Toa Nuva type of clone. They're all the same general build, but with kind of differences, small, minute details, henceforth explaining the different piece counts. Anawa being the lowest, and the Nokama being the highest. Wait, no, Whenua being the highest, which is kind of a reversal from most stone characters and earth characters. Another pro I would have to say would be the color schemes. Now, not in the fact that I personally like the gray or anything. I do think it does add something. It gives them kind of a more the gray is biomechanic-ish. This is the bio-tissue, and then everything else is mechanical. So I kind of like how that looks. They layer it nicely. Another thing is the color schemes are quite concise. Not as colorful as, say, 2001 stuff, because it's all one color and then gray. So it kind of follows a Borakal trend. But it still gets the look across, and it's very concise, and it's very nice. And it's still really cool to look at. It gives you a lot more of a biomechanically feel, if that's a thing. Another pro would be their new armament. Normally, back in the day, sans the Toa Nuva, their weapons would be the same color as their masks, armor, whatever. These guys have very different weapons from what we've seen. We now have a large disc launcher, similar to what the Metru Torin have. We have these weird-looking things. Shovel-ish things. We got ice shoes, standard swords, and then these. Now, another thing that these weapons introduced were the flexibility of them. And I don't really think we got that. Sure, you could take Liwa's katana and go, but these are purposefully meant to wiggle and wabble. Another pro I would have to say would be their eyes. Now, or at least the heads as a whole. Now, back in the day, I'm going to say that a lot, the masks used a stud connection. It'd just be a little stud right there and connect loosely onto the face. Now, this new head design is fantastic because it allows for the 2003 introduced axle on-mask system, but is still compatible, although not as well, with the stud system. This was an ingenious move by LEGO, as it allows a lot more possibilities. Also, we have a new eyepiece, and it connects a lot easier. It just slides in, you put an axle right in there, and bam, you have a new eye color. They also released a lot more eye colors, such as dark red, dark blue, dark red, and dark blue. Okay, maybe those are the only ones, but still we have a nice variety of colors here. Another pro, and I have to say it, despite the fact that these guys are so chock full of mobility, somehow they still have the gear function. Somehow LEGO managed to take the gear function from 2001 and 2002 and 2003 and improve on it in a design such as this. As you can see, the gears are concealed while still being visible. They're held in, and the shoulders are below their heads, which is standard. But it looks fantastic. It works really well, especially with this overall design. They're not sticking out, they're not openly visible, they're still visible, but it gives a lot better feel to the biomechanical look while still having another function. These guys have so many functions with their mobility, the posability, and the gears. It's crazy. So there you have it. Those are the pros. Obviously, as you can see, these are fantastic sets. They have improved so much on the Rakshi design, the Toa Metru design, the Toa Nuva design, and here you have it. Arguably, some of the most perfect sets we have ever gotten. Unfortunately, even the most perfect set, which isn't exactly a thing, can have a con, and that is what these have. So let's get into that. Start off the bat with the standard gear system, as some would say. Unfortunately, because it is the gear system, and the Toa Metru don't really have the same locking ability that the Toa Nuva and Toa Metru did that I showed you guys. At least none that I have personally seen. So it's a little bit harder to lock the gear into place. And as with the gear system, it'll flop. As long as your gears aren't really dusty. But anyway, it makes for posing and picture taking and whatnot a little bit difficult. So the gears are out of the way. Another con I would have to say is the gray. Now, I know a lot of people would probably not agree with me on this, but in a way it mutes all the colors. Already we have dark colors, but this mutes them a lot more. It's just gray, and gray, as we've seen, can be bleh a lot of the time. LEGO is going to use gray a lot in the future, and this was just a precursor to that. Speaking of color schemes, another con, obviously enough, you'll hear this a lot, are the blue pins, which in a lot of ways break the color scheme for all of them, even Okama, which is kind of sad considering she's the water Toa. Speaking of Okama, another con personally for her would be this mask. It breaks up her color scheme of dark muted blue with this weird bright blue mask. Now even Gali could get away. Galimata could get away with having the translucent mask because it was still even a closer color to her initial color scheme. Okama does not have that satisfaction, unfortunately. Another color scheme breaking con would probably be in the center of their chests, the white axle rod that primarily controls the gear function. This is a con for all of them except for Nuju. Another con, and this has to do with the head area, and the new eye stalk piece would be for only 4 of them. Whenua, Vakama, Matau, and Anawa. When you look up, you can't look up fully. This is because there are 2 different ways of connecting the heads. One is like these 4, where you put the hand connector that way, which allows the head only to go about that high. The other way is with Nokama Nuju, where it's upright, which allows the head to go all the way up. Now it's great for Nokama Nuju, especially considering that they are the tallest of the Metru. For the other 4, unfortunately, it is definitely a con, and a little bit of an issue. Another con would probably be the way that their shoulders jut out like that on these little spindly stick things. That is a little bit disconcerting and looks a little bit odd. Now, I'll probably mention it here. A con some would have would be their torso area and their proportions as a whole. We've been accustomed to, in Bionicle Toa sets, having their hands reach either to their hips or way below it, almost to their knees. These guys are more human proportioned, as you can probably see. Their hands reach about to their hips, almost to the knees, but not quite. They're a lot more closer to human proportions, which is kind of different than what we have seen. Now, I'm just throwing that out there. That's not an opinion I personally hold, but that is an opinion that some may. So there you have it. Those are the cons that are obvious to me. Probably the last one I could probably think of would be the weird eye colors. Orange for blue, dark blue for brown, dark red for green, and that's about it. Those seem like odd color choices, but they're not set breaking. So that about does it for the cons. Now you might say, oh well, the review's over. However, there is one thing I would like to bring up, and that is all of these weapons here follow a trait that the Toa Nuva introduced. Dual purpose. Give me a second and I shall show you. Alright, now at first glance, it might look like, oh, they just lost their weapons. That's not very useful at all. However, if you look closer, you'll see that they've all done something very different with each and every one of their weapons. Now, they're not as obvious as the Toa Nuva's dual-purpose weapons. Like a lot of them went on their feet, Liwa's used them as hands, and Pohatu's could turn into a weird, spiky, probably will hurt if you kick it Koli ball. With the Toa Metru, they introduced something that a lot of people probably wanted, and that was done in limited, very unknown amounts in the Toa Mata if you had the right part. Storage. That's right. For 4 of these Toa, you can put their weapons on their backs. Just right there. They go on without any issue. Now, obviously, they're a little bit different, but I'm going to go from left to right. Start off with Whenua. Right here, Whenua's weapons, while they do not store, you might notice he has this piece here. This keeps his arm together. This keeps his arms together to form a massive drill. Now, obviously, you can take his weapons and using one of these 3 connection points, extend them to reach further. As soon as you can get it on there. There we go. Works a little bit better if you do this preemptively. But there you have it. Ish. But it turns into a massive drill. And that's pretty cool. And then, when you're done, blam. splits apart. The form is good old weapons again. It's whatever you want to do with this, it's up to you. But yeah, his weapons turn into a massive drill. No commas, obviously enough. Just store. They just store. I've seen some people put them upright, but, just on their back. And it makes the blue pins more obvious. The commas is kind of dual purpose in its dual purpose. On the one hand, you can make him look cool like this and have his disc shining in the background. Really cool. On the other, this is actually used in the story a lot. And when you don't have the blue pins, which are being obnoxious as ever. In the story, you could take his disc launcher and put it upside down, and it turns into a jetpack. That's right. First Toa with a jetpack, we've reached the 21st century here. With Nuju, he officially becomes the tallest Toa by having snowshoes. Now these look really cool. They look like really good snowshoes. But obviously you already know that they are his crystal spikes, which he holds in his hands. And they already come with the pins in a similar fashion to Pohatu Nuva. Matau's is also a little bit dual purpose. On the one hand, you could have them store like that, and that's fine and all. But on the other, blam! They're wings. That's fantastic. A Toa of air with actual wings, not gliders, like Liwa Nuva. So that's fantastic. Looks really cool. And finally, poor Olanawa here. Just storage. That's kind of a shame. But that's great though, even though it's just storage. All of these guys have dual function weapons. They all do something. They probably showed up in the story in one way or another. So that's great. You can reimagine the story with using these dual purposes. So honestly, that about says it all. That about says it all. My apologies for the misspeakings. I'd just like to say very quickly that I did not forget Lee Khan. I will review him in another video. Now, I also did not forget the Toa Haga, so do not get on my case about those. Join me next week, and I will be going over the fearsome, slightly mediocre Vaki. I hope to see you all there, and if there's any inquiries you have, or anything that I may have missed, please let me know. I'm always eager to hear. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all next week.